I am sitting in my backyard. It's a lush spring day, the sky a crystalline blue, washed clean from a night of gentle rain. The azaleas and rhodies have roared into bloom. The wind sings through the trees, carrying the joyful voices of children shouting, screaming, and rhythmically hooting as they play on the soccer field just down the path from my house. I live behind the middle school where all my kids went to school, just down the walkway from their elementary school. This ecstatic schoolyard din is the soundtrack to my life, and I daily, dearly love it. But today I cannot hear those voices without wincing and imagining them as screams of terror. And this is not the first time this thought has chilled me. I do not write this article to further break your heart, although I suspect it does and will. We are all experiencing collective heartbreak and psychological trauma after the events in Texas, which occurred right before the shooting in Pennsylvania and Buffalo, and right after Cleveland, and before North Charleston and San Juan, and it is vital for voting adults to stay in the space of discomfort. No turning away this time, no Band-Aid. Leave the wound open. Do everything to resist growing numb and stay in the discomfort, because we need this collective grief and trauma to be the terrible cataclysm that finally forces change. This has to be the time. Evil will always occur, and nothing can stop an act of madness. Not police, not arming teachers, nothing. But there are ways to make gun violence occur with less frequency. Here is an immediate, actionable, and important step we can take today. Dave Cullen, journalist and author of Parkland, The Birth of a Movement, asks that we stop calling for gun control, and we shift to the proper terminology, gun safety. Regardless of where we fall in the political spectrum, everyone can get behind gun safety. This subtle but easy shift might be the first step in bridging the divide and hearing each other again. As Steve Kerr, coach of the Golden State Warriors, he lost his father to gun violence, quoted in an impassioned pregame speech, 90% of the country believes in reform. So the fault is not in our politics. The fault is in our politicians. Kerr mentioned H.R. 8, a House bill expanding background checks to include private sales and gun show sales. The House actually passed it in 2019. H.R. 8 has been sitting on the docket for more than 2 years. As Kerr explains, there is a reason they will not vote on it, and that is simply to hold on to power. So here is another actionable item. Vote like your life depends on it. Care enough to vote against your own perceived interest. And if your representative is a person who will not support gun safety, then take the risk and vote for a candidate who will. Gun safety has to be a deal breaker. It is time to decide who we are as a nation. Stop voting in elected officials who are permanently running for office instead of doing their damn job. And dear politician, if you won't sign a common-sense gun law requiring background checks and a waiting period, then you do not belong in office. You are not suited to serve. Get off the campaign trail, do your actual job, and protect our children. Gun safety is not a liberal issue. It is not a conservative issue. Gun safety seems to be a problem for the officials we are electing. And if politicians are afraid of gun lobbyists, then the solution is easy. Well, maybe it is not easy, but it is clear. Term limits. Term limits eliminate the power of the gun lobby. Term limits empty the gun lobby out of our politicians' pockets. Is our national identity really wrapped up in guns? Please don't let Brian Bilston's poem be right. America is a gun? No other country on the face of the earth has this level of gun violence. It's time. It's way past time for real reform. This has to be the time. Sports journalist Bob Costa says, what we always hear in the aftermath of this violence is, let's talk about mental health. Let's talk about the police response. Let's talk about security at the perimeter of schools. All those are reasonable things to talk about, but there's always one thing that is off the table: common sense gun laws and safety measures. This is off the table for many supposed lawmakers who won't make laws for this because they treat the Second Amendment as if it were a sacrament. The Second Amendment is not absolute. It's part of a living document brilliantly designed to be amended to allow for our changing times. Let's get the assault weapons off the streets and keep them where they belong, in the hands of responsible, professional, trained, vetted, and oath-sworn to protect and defend. For those left out there who have not been directly affected, I bet you are less than 6 degrees separated from someone murdered due to senseless gun violence. Because it happens all too frequently. It creeps ever closer and closer to our backyards. I realize how crass the question is, but the situation does beg, who is next? I am the prize, friends. Let our children grow up going to school and screaming for joy, not dialing 911 as they lie on the floor of classrooms soaked in the blood of their best friends. Too crass? Too heartbreaking? Stay in the heartbreak like the ancient sage Rumi advised. Don't look away. Keep your eye on the bandaged place. That's where the light enters you. Keep your heart open, vulnerable, soft, broken, and full of light. Let that pain inform your vote.